Ethan Ward stared out of the viewport of the shuttle as it descended through the thick, swirling clouds of Varkon 9, the planet that held the most feared military academy in the galaxy. He had seen pictures, holovids, and read countless reports about the place, but nothing could truly prepare him for its scale. Towers of black metal scraped the sky, and massive gates guarded by dozens of armored sentries gleamed like dark crystals. Alien flags of every shape and color waved in the stormy wind. This was a place where warriors from hundreds of worlds came to prove themselves, and Ethan was about to become one of the newest recruits. The shuttle landed with a shudder, the doors hissed open, and the smell of ozone mixed with alien spices drifted inside. Ethan adjusted his simple human pack and stepped down, keeping his head high. He was shorter than most of the other cadets already waiting, barely 5 feet, 10 with lean muscle from years of running, hiking, and training on Earth. Around him, towers of alien strength loomed. The first to notice him were the Grithians, insectoid beings taller than 3 meters, with segmented limbs and eyes like polished amber. They whispered to each other, antennae twitching. Next were the Zarkon reptilians, scaled and powerful, moving with the confidence of predators who had never known defeat. Even some of the cyborg cadets, with reinforced exoskeletons and glowing optic lenses, turned to measure this human who dared step into their world. Pathetic, one Grithian muttered in a sharp hiss. Its voice was like the scraping of metal. He looks like a child. Ethan did not answer. He did not flinch. Every insult bounced off him as if he were made of stone. He had learned a long time ago that reaction gave power to the ones who tried to put you down. Instead, he quietly studied his surroundings, taking in the drill formations, the training grounds, and the distant mountains where cadets would run and fight. A booming voice interrupted his thoughts. It came from a massive creature at the head of the formation. It was a Sergeant Korvax, a Varkonian whose body was the size of a small tank and covered in armor-like skin. His 3 eyes glowed red as he scanned the recruits. "Attention, cadets," Korvax's voice echoed over the grounds. "Welcome to the Galactic Military Academy, where only the strongest survive. Your bodies, your minds, and your spirit will be tested. Weakness is not allowed. Failure is not an option." The alien drill sergeants moved down the line, examining each cadet. When they reached Ethan, one of them, a Zarkon with jagged scales and a snarl permanently etched on his face, leaned down. "You are human," the Zarkon said, his voice sharp. "You have no natural strength, no armor, no claws. Why are you here? You will break before the first day ends." Ethan smiled faintly, almost imperceptibly. "I will try my best," he replied calmly. The Zarkon's eyes narrowed. Most alien cadets would have answered with anger, but Ethan's quiet confidence confused him. A murmur ran through the crowd. Humans were rare in the academy, and none had ever impressed the sergeants in the first week. Korvax waved his claws and the cadets were split into units. Ethan was placed in Unit Alpha 7, the Death Squad, known for the harshest drills. The other cadets looked at him with a mixture of pity and amusement. No human had ever survived even 1 full week in Alpha 7, let alone the legendary Death March, a trial that had earned its name because most recruits never finished it alive. The first day began with physical drills. Cadets ran across uneven terrain, climbed artificial walls twice their height, and lifted weights that would crush most humans. Ethan kept pace, his body aching but his determination steady. He noticed the alien cadets struggling, some whining or stumbling, but he did not mock them. Instead, he focused on rhythm, breathing, and conserving energy. While the aliens relied on bursts of strength, Ethan relied on endurance. At lunchtime, cadets were allowed a brief rest. Ethan found a quiet spot under a metal overhang. Some Grithians approached him. "You think you belong here?" one asked, clicking its mandibles. "You're small. You will die in the desert trial." Ethan did not answer immediately. He took a sip from his water pack and studied them. "Maybe, but I will walk further than anyone thinks I can." The Grithians hissed and walked away. Ethan's calmness unnerved them. In Alpha 7, fear was common. and arrogance was deadly. Confidence, however, was almost alien. The afternoon brought mental training. The sergeants tested strategy, coordination, and quick thinking. Ethan excelled, using observation to predict movements of larger, stronger cadets. He noticed patterns in their behavior that none of the aliens seemed to see. In mock combat exercises, he dodged and countered attacks using agility and timing, rather than brute force. By the end of the day, some alien cadets began to whisper to each other. "He moves differently," one reptilian said. "He doesn't rush, yet he never falls behind. He's persistent," another replied. Persistence was a quality alien warriors often underestimated. Most relied on raw strength, but Ethan's endurance and willpower were already showing their value. By evening, cadets were allowed to visit the mess hall. Ethan watched as aliens argued over rations, some hoarding food, some too proud to ask for help. He took a measured approach, keeping his meals small but sufficient. Discipline was part of his strategy. He knew that hunger, thirst, and exhaustion would be enemies long before the death march began. As the day ended, the cadets gathered for the night briefing. Korvax's 3 glowing eyes scanned the group again. "Tomorrow," he boomed, "you will begin the preparation drill for the death march. This is not a test for the weak. Only those who can endure heat, cold, storms, and exhaustion will survive. If you cannot keep pace, you will be left behind. Humans, your species has no history. Here, I do not expect you to survive." Ethan listened silently. The weight of the words should have been discouraging, but he felt only determination. Humans were used to struggle, to endurance beyond natural limits. Every hardship in his life, running, through rough terrain on Earth, surviving storms, hiking for days without food, had prepared him for this. The death march would be hard, yes, but it was not impossible. Later that night, Ethan sat alone in his bunk, looking out the small viewport at the storm-lit mountains in the distance. The alien cadets snored and muttered around him, many still, doubting the small human who had not even complained once during the day. He thought about what lay ahead. Long marches under the twin suns, storms that could strip flesh from bone, and exhaustion that could break even the strongest alien warrior. But he also thought about his father, who had taught him to never give up, and about Earth, where humans survived on courage and determination, not natural advantages. A faint smile appeared on Ethan's face. "I may be small," he whispered to himself, "but I will endure. And when they see me finish, they will remember what humans are capable of." As the lights dimmed and the night deepened, Ethan's resolve hardened. The death march was coming, and he would meet it not with fear but with the quiet, relentless will of a human cadet determined to survive. Above him, the alien stars blinked coldly through the viewport. Tomorrow, the Academy would witness the beginning of a journey that no one, especially the drill sergeants, would forget. The next morning, the cadets of Alpha 7 assembled under the sharp gaze of the alien drill sergeants. The twin suns of Varkon 9 rose slowly, casting long shadows across the barren training grounds. A cold wind swept across the rocky terrain, and sand and dust stung the recruits' eyes. Today marked the beginning of the preparation drill for the Death March, a test infamous throughout the galaxy. No cadet, human or alien, had ever finished it without showing extreme exhaustion. Sergeant Korvax stepped forward, his enormous frame towering over all cadets. The glow in his 3 eyes intensified as he addressed the group. "The Death March is not a simple exercise. You will traverse the scorched dunes of Varkon, a desert known for storms, deadly heat, and terrain that crushes even the strongest legs. Water is scarce, and failure is expected," he said, his voice echoing across the dry plain. "You will begin at dawn. Only those who endure will live to see the next day. Humans, watch carefully. You are not built for this." Ethan stood silently, adjusting his pack straps. Around him, alien cadets groaned. The Grithians clicked their mandibles in frustration. The Zarkon reptilians flexed their claws, already anticipating the struggle. Cyborg cadets recalibrated their systems for the harsh terrain. Ethan knew what lay ahead: long hours of walking, carrying heavy packs, no shade, and brutal winds. Yet he felt a quiet confidence. Earth had taught him that preparation, patience, and endurance could overcome raw power. His strategy was simple: pace himself, conserve energy, and observe the weaknesses of others. The march began with a loud blast from Korvax's horn. The cadets set off across the shifting dunes. Ethan started at a steady pace, letting the larger and stronger aliens rush ahead. Within the first hour, many reptilians surged forward, relying on speed and strength to cover the dunes quickly. But the sand slowed them. Each step sank deep, forcing their legs to work harder. Some began to sweat heavily under the scorching sun, their breathing uneven. Ethan moved differently. Each step was deliberate. He lifted his feet carefully, keeping a rhythm. His small size was actually an advantage here. He sank less into the sand than his taller peers, and his endurance allowed him to maintain a steady pace without exhaustion. By midday, the first signs of strain were obvious. The Grithians, who had relied on bursts of speed and quick strikes, began to falter. Their segmented legs trembled as the heat and uneven terrain sapped their energy. One Grithian stumbled, its mandibles clicking in frustration. Ethan slowed slightly, observing carefully. "You will not survive," a Zarkon hissed as he passed Ethan, muscles rippling with effort. Ethan kept his calm. "I don't need to outrun you," he said quietly. "I just need to keep going." The aliens didn't respond. They were too focused on pushing themselves beyond reason. Within an hour, several had fallen behind, collapsing onto the hot sand. Ethan helped one struggling Grithian back onto its legs. The creature looked shocked. "Why, help me?" it asked weakly. "Because giving up doesn't help either of us," Ethan replied. The Grithian's eyes widened, and it nodded silently. For the first time, some alien cadets began to notice that Ethan's approach was different. He did not rely on strength, nor did he rush. He relied on willpower, strategy, and endurance. By afternoon, the twin suns were at their peak. The temperature soared, and the sand burned underfoot. Cadets' water packs ran low. Many were unprepared for the harshness. The cyborg cadets adjusted cooling systems, but even their mechanical parts overheated. Reptilians' thick scales cracked under the heat. Only Ethan maintained steady breathing, careful hydration, and a slow, deliberate pace. At one point, a sudden sandstorm swept across the dunes. Visibility dropped to almost zero. Cadets panicked, stumbling blindly. Ethan pressed his back against a rock outcrop, feeling the wind and sand lash his face. He closed his eyes for a moment and let his senses guide him. Step by step, he moved forward, careful to avoid cliffs and rocks. When the storm passed, he was ahead of most of the other cadets. The drill sergeants watched from observation posts. Korvax's eyes narrowed. "This human, he is still moving?" he growled. "He should be dead, exhausted, or collapsing." Meanwhile, some alien cadets began murmuring among themselves. "Look at him," whispered one Grithian. "He doesn't rush. He doesn't stop. He just keeps going. He may actually survive," another reptilian muttered, disbelief in his voice. Ethan noticed one reptilian struggling to carry a heavier pack. He paused and offered a hand, helping the cadet balance. The reptilian grunted but accepted the help. The alien cadet did not understand it, but the gesture gave him enough strength to keep walking. Ethan's quiet humanity was having an unexpected effect. Alien cadets began to rely on his example, pacing themselves instead of overexerting. The day dragged on. The first signs of exhaustion became impossible to ignore. Most cadets were dripping sweat, their breathing labored. Some began to argue, blaming each other for slowing the group. Others collapsed completely, unable to rise. Ethan stayed calm, occasionally taking short rests in the shade of small rock formations, drinking only what he needed. By evening, the sun sank low, casting long shadows across the dunes. The remaining cadets gathered near a small ridge overlooking the finish line of the first day's stretch. Only a handful had made it this far. Ethan was still among them, walking steadily, not the fastest, but far from the weakest. Korvax descended from his observation post, his 3 glowing eyes fixed on Ethan. "Impressive," he said slowly, almost reluctantly. "You have endurance beyond any human I have ever seen." Ethan gave a faint nod. "I've had training," he said simply. Korvax's claws clenched. "This is only the beginning. The death march will test you further. Heat, storms, lack of water, and exhaustion will push you to your limits. Many will fall tomorrow. Do not think today's progress guarantees survival." Ethan did not flinch. He looked at the alien cadets around him, some nodding silently in respect, others still scowling in disbelief. He knew that the real challenge was still ahead, but he also knew he had discovered something important. The secret to survival was not speed or strength, but persistence and calm determination. That night, as the cadets set up small tents and rests, Ethan quietly prepared for the next day. He checked his water, adjusted his pack, and reviewed the terrain maps Korvax had given them. Every detail mattered. Every decision could mean life or failure. A Grithian approached him quietly. "I don't understand you," it said. "How can a human survive what we fail at? You are different." Ethan smiled faintly. "We humans endure. We keep going. That is all." The alien stared for a moment, then walked away, uncertain, but impressed. Others watched Ethan from their tents, whispering about his strange resilience. Rumors began to spread quietly. The human cadet may actually survive the death march. As the twin moons rose over Varkon 9, Ethan lay on his cot, eyes on the stars. The first day had been grueling, yet he had walked further and steadier than any alien cadet. Tomorrow would bring more heat, more storms, more challenges. But he felt ready. His body ached, yes, but his spirit was strong. "I will not stop," he whispered. "Not now. Not ever. The death march will not break me." And with that thought, Ethan drifted into a light but restful sleep, unaware that his quiet determination was already changing the way the alien cadets and the drill sergeants viewed humanity. The galaxy would soon learn that humans were not the weakest. Humans were different, unpredictable, and unyielding. The sun rose again over the barren dunes of Varkon 9, casting its harsh light over the few cadets who had survived the first day of the death march. Most alien cadets were exhausted beyond words. Some moved slowly, their limbs trembling. Others had given up entirely, sitting in the sand and letting the wind whip against their armor, believing there was no way forward. Ethan Ward adjusted his pack and rose from his small resting spot, muscles stiff but steady. He had slept only lightly, careful not to let his body cool too much. The night had been cold and windy, but the lessons he had learned from Earth's mountains and deserts carried him through. Humans, he knew, survived by endurance and adaptation, not by relying solely on natural strength. Korvax, the massive Varkonian sergeant, stood at the edge of the formation, his glowing eyes scanning the remaining cadets. The other drill sergeants, though far smaller than Korvax, mirrored his gaze. They had expected all humans to fail immediately, yet here was Ethan standing among the few survivors. "Humans," one of the reptilian sergeants hissed. "It is impossible. They are weak, yet he walks without strain." Korvax's gaze did not leave Ethan. "Perhaps he is not weak," he muttered under his breath. His voice was low but filled with caution. "Perhaps this species is not fully understood." The march resumed. The desert's terrain became harsher with every step. Jagged rocks cut through sand, hidden sinkholes threatened to swallow a careless foot, and the twin suns bore down relentlessly. Water became scarce, and the alien cadets struggled to ration their supplies. Many stumbled and fell, unable to continue without assistance. Ethan, however, moved steadily. He had calculated his energy, drank only when necessary, and adjusted his pace to conserve strength. His small size gave him an unexpected advantage in the difficult terrain. He sank less into the sand and could move carefully through narrow paths that larger cadets could not navigate. At one point, a Grithian cadet, exhausted and limping, collapsed into a sand drift. Its mandibles clicked frantically as it tried to rise, but the sun's heat made its body weak and slow. Ethan knelt and offered a hand. "Come on," he said quietly. "You can make it." The Grithian hesitated, confused by the unexpected gesture, but eventually took his hand. Ethan helped him to his feet, supporting him as they continued. The other cadets looked on in surprise. It was unusual, even frowned upon, for cadets to help each other during the death march. Survival was expected to be individual. Yet Ethan's calm, steady approach was inspiring some to rethink their methods. By mid-morning, several cadets had fallen so far behind that the drill sergeants considered leaving them behind. The desert was not forgiving. Yet Ethan kept moving, his mind focused, his breathing steady. He observed the struggles of others, noting how bursts of speed and overexertion caused exhaustion faster than steady pacing. A Zarkon reptilian, one of the largest cadets remaining, sneered at Ethan. "You rely on tricks, human," he hissed. "Strength and size matter here. You are doomed to fail." Ethan smiled faintly, almost imperceptibly. "Perhaps," he said, "but I will keep moving. That is what matters." The reptilian snorted and surged ahead, muscles rippling. For a while he seemed to leave Ethan behind. But as the hours passed, his bursts of speed gave way to heavy breathing and staggering steps. The rocky dunes took their toll. When a particularly steep incline came, he stumbled, nearly rolling down the slope. Ethan passed him slowly, helping him up when the cadet could not recover alone. By noon, the effects of the death march were clear. The sun was merciless. Cadets' hydration packs were emptying faster than expected. Blisters formed on feet, muscles ached, and many grew dizzy. Storm clouds began to gather in the distance, promising high winds and sandstorms. Most cadets feared the coming hours, unsure if they could survive both heat and storm. Ethan observed the sky, calculating the likely path of the storm, and adjusted his route slightly to avoid the worst of it. Humans had survived storms on Earth by reading the environment carefully, and he applied that same instinct here. The alien cadets, relying mostly on brute force and instinct, often did not see the danger until it was upon them. The first storm hit in the late afternoon. Sand whipped into their eyes and visibility dropped to almost nothing. Some cadets panicked, shouting and stumbling blindly. Ethan pressed his back to a small rock formation and carefully moved step by step, letting the storm guide him rather than trying to fight it. He helped a struggling Grithian find shelter, demonstrating patience and calm that was entirely alien to the other cadets. Korvax observed the scene from a distant ridge, his three eyes narrowing. "Impossible," he growled. "He survived storms that cripple the others without hesitation." The other drill sergeants, usually confident and unshakable, shared uneasy glances. Ethan's endurance was not just physical, it was mental. He had learned the most important lesson of survival: keep calm, conserve energy, and never give in to panic. By evening, the storm subsided, leaving the dunes scattered with exhausted cadets. Many lay in the sand, breathing heavily, too weak to continue. Yet Ethan remained standing, moving slowly but steadily toward the next checkpoint. The alien cadets whispered among themselves, their voices full of disbelief. He is still walking," muttered one Grithian, "even after the storm. He is unstoppable," a reptilian admitted quietly, his pride wounded. Ethan noticed their stares but did not respond. His focus was on the march, on each careful step, on each breath. He had learned on Earth that endurance was not measured by bursts of strength, but by the ability to keep moving when everything tells you to stop. That night, the remaining cadets camped under the faint light of Varkon 9's twin moons. Exhaustion was written on every face. Many alien cadets doubted they could make it to the next day. But Ethan's quiet persistence inspired a few. Some attempted to mimic his methodical pacing and careful hydration. Some even approached him, quietly asking for tips on how to conserve energy and maintain focus. Ethan offered guidance calmly, never boasting, never appearing stronger than he truly was. Korvax summoned Ethan to the observation post that night. The massive Varkonian's glowing eyes scanned him carefully. "You are different," Korvax said slowly, his voice a low growl. "You have endured when others have collapsed. You have survived storms, heat, exhaustion, yet you appear ready for more. Explain yourself." Ethan stood at attention, posture straight, eyes clear. "Sir, I am trained to endure. I pace myself, conserve energy and stay calm. I do not try to rush what must be done slowly. That is all." Korvax's eyes narrowed. "Humans, you are unpredictable. You do not fight as the galaxy expects. You do not collapse as the galaxy expects. Perhaps there is more in your species than we have understood." Ethan nodded. "I only know what I have been taught on Earth. Survival comes from persistence, not power alone." Korvax grunted, unable to respond further. He turned to the other drill sergeants. "This human, we must watch him closely. He may survive the death march, and if he does, we must reconsider what humans are capable of." The night deepened. Ethan lay in his cot, eyes on the stars above the desert. The first 2 days of the death march had been punishing, yet he had walked further, steadier, and calmer than any cadet around him. Alien cadets who had mocked him were beginning to whisper, uncertain and impressed. Even the drill sergeants, usually unshakable in their assessments, were questioning what they had always believed. Ethan thought quietly about the days ahead. The desert would grow harsher. Storms would be worse. Heat would rise, and exhaustion would threaten to break even the strongest alien warriors. But he felt ready. He knew that the same principles that had carried him this far, calm, persistence, and careful preparation, would see him through whatever lay ahead. "I will endure," he whispered to himself. "I will not give up. I will finish this march, no matter what comes." And with that thought, Ethan closed his eyes, his body tired but his spirit stronger than ever. He did not know what the next day would bring, but he was certain of one thing. He would continue walking, step by step, until the death march was behind him, and in doing so he would begin to show the galaxy that humans were not weak, but quietly unstoppable. The final day of the death march arrived. The twin suns of Varkon 9 blazed high in the sky, relentless and merciless. Only a handful of cadets remained, and the harsh desert had stripped away all pride, leaving only determination. The alien drill. Sergeants stood atop a ridge, their glowing eyes fixed on the marchers below. They had seen exhaustion, weakness, and collapse, but what they were about to witness would shake their beliefs to the core. Ethan Ward moved steadily, his feet sinking slightly into the hot sand with each step. His pack was heavy, sweat poured down his face, and blisters burned on his hands and feet. Yet he did not falter. His breathing was steady, calm, controlled. Around him, alien cadets stumbled, some crawling, some leaning heavily on their neighbors. Many had fallen behind, unable to continue. The Grithians, reptilians, and even some cyborg cadets were gasping, their strength drained. Korvax's 3 eyes glowed brighter than ever as he observed Ethan. The human's steady progress defied every expectation. "He should be broken," the massive sergeant growled. "He should be lying in the sand like the others. Yet he marches on." The terrain grew more dangerous. Rocky cliffs rose on either side of the narrow path, and hidden sinkholes threatened the unwary. The sand was deeper, the heat stronger, and the winds sharper. Most cadets had to stop frequently, panting, holding their sides or helping each other up. But Ethan continued, his mind focused on one goal: the finish line. A massive sandstorm suddenly roared in from the horizon, moving faster than expected. Visibility dropped to near zero, and the alien cadets panicked. Some tried to run blindly, stumbling and falling. Others froze, terrified of the shifting dunes and whipping sand. Ethan, however, slowed his pace slightly, using the storm as a guide rather than an enemy. He pressed his back against a jagged rock formation, letting the wind pass around him, and carefully stepped forward 1 foot at a time. One reptilian cadet screamed in frustration as it tried to push forward, but its muscles were burned from the heat and the exertion. Its pride would not allow it to stop, yet its body had failed it. Ethan, noticing the struggle, offered his hand. "Come on," he said. "You can make it if you take it step by step." The reptilian hesitated. Pride warred with survival instinct. Finally, it took Ethan's hand, and together they moved forward, slower but steady. Other cadets began to notice the human's calm determination, whispering among themselves. "He doesn't rush," a Grithian muttered. "He doesn't panic, he just keeps going." "He is unstoppable," a cyborg cadet admitted, his mechanical voice tinged with awe. As the storm passed, the final stretch of the march lay before them, a steep incline leading to the ridge, where the drill sergeants observed. Rocks jutted out at dangerous angles, and the sand shifted with every step. Many cadets hesitated, unsure if they could climb without slipping. Ethan, however, focused on 1 step at a time, using his small size to navigate the narrow path carefully. Korvax's eyes widened as he watched. The human cadet was still moving with energy left in him. Most alien cadets were barely crawling, their bodies failing them despite their natural strength. Yet Ethan seemed unharmed, not because he had avoided exhaustion, but because he had never overextended himself. His strategy of pacing, conserving energy, and staying calm had carried him farther than anyone thought possible. The final moments arrived. Ethan reached the top of the incline and looked out across the final stretch. The finish line was in sight. Only one other cadet, a Grithian who had stubbornly refused to give up, remained a few meters behind him. Ethan slowed briefly, waiting, to ensure the Grithian could catch up. Survival, he knew, was more than speed. It was endurance, determination, and sometimes helping others. As he crossed the finish line, the drill sergeant's jaws tightened. Korvax let out a deep, low growl that reverberated across the ridge. The human had not only survived, he had done so without collapsing. Most alien cadets had expected the human to fall halfway, yet here he was, standing with energy still in his body, calm and composed. The Grithian reached the line moments later, panting and staggering but alive. Ethan offered a hand to help it upright, just as he had done during the march. The gesture was simple, yet it carried a message. Humanity's strength was not just physical, but also in spirit. The other drill sergeants murmured among themselves, confusion and disbelief written across their faces. He finished, a reptilian said, voice shaking. The human finished the death march. Korvax's glowing eyes focused on Ethan. Not only did he finish, the massive sergeant said slowly, he did so with control, composure, and strength still in him. How is this possible? Ethan stood at attention, breathing steady, his small human frame showing none of the exhaustion that ravaged the alien cadets around him. "Sir," he said simply. "I kept moving. I paced myself, conserved energy, and stayed calm. I did not try to rush what needed to be done slowly." Korvax's eyes narrowed. "Humans," he muttered under his breath. "Your species is unpredictable. You endure what we believe to be impossible. You do not collapse under pressure. You survive when all others fail." The cadets who had completed the march looked on, some with awe, others with jealousy, but all with new respect. Even the Grithians and reptilians, who had mocked him at the start, could not deny the human's achievement. Korvax turned to the other drill sergeants. "Record this. This human cadet must be studied. His species possesses endurance and determination beyond what we thought possible. This is not natural strength. It is something else, something human." The other sergeants nodded, though some still struggled to understand. Humans had always been considered fragile, weak, and unremarkable. Yet here was Ethan Ward, small by alien standards, standing at the top of the most grueling march in the Academy's history, alive, composed, and still strong. Ethan's mind was already looking forward. The death march had tested him physically, mentally, and emotionally. It had forced him to think, adapt, and help others survive. But he knew this was only the beginning. Humanity had a long way to go in the galaxy, and he intended to show that willpower, endurance, and determination were weapons in their own right. Korvax finally spoke again, his voice low and filled with a mix of respect and concern. "Human, you have done what was believed impossible. You have survived when all others failed. You are remarkable." Ethan nodded. "Thank you, sir," he replied simply. The drill sergeants stepped back, murmuring to one another, their previous confidence shaken. For the first time in their long careers, they saw humans not as weaklings, but as unpredictable forces to be reckoned with. The Death March, designed to crush cadets, had instead revealed a strength that no alien species could measure by size or power alone. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the dunes, Ethan walked among the remaining cadets. Some, Grithians, reptilians, and even cyborg cadets approached him, quietly thanking him for the guidance he had given during the march. For many, this was the first time they had seen humanity's quiet power, endurance, patience, and the willingness to help others. Korvax watched silently from the ridge. His 3 glowing eyes were wide with realization. If one human can survive this, what happens when more humans enter the galaxy? He whispered. Ethan did not hear him. His focus was not on praise, not on recognition, and certainly not on fear. His focus was on the next step, the next challenge, and the path that humanity would carve in the galaxy. He had endured the death march. He had survived when all others had failed, and he had shown without a doubt that humans were not weak. They were determined, unstoppable, and full of surprises. The final note of the day was clear to everyone who had witnessed it. Strength alone does not guarantee survival. Strategy, endurance, and unyielding willpower, qualities humans possessed in abundance, could outmatch even the most fearsome alien abilities. The Academy, and indeed the galaxy, would never see humanity the same way again. Ethan Ward had completed the Death March, and with it he had begun to change the galaxy's understanding of human potential. The sun rose slowly over Varkon 9, painting the desert in shades of gold and red. The heat of the day promised to be harsh, yet for Ethan Ward, the morning was calm. He had survived the Death March, defying every expectation. His body ached, muscles burned, and blisters pained his hands and feet. But his mind was clear, his spirit steady. He had endured what the strongest alien cadets had feared, and the galaxy would remember. The surviving cadets of Alpha 7 gathered at the central training plaza. Their bodies were tired, their uniforms torn and scorched by the harsh desert trials. Many had collapsed at least once during the march, yet they had survived. Among them, Ethan stood tall, steady, and composed. Korvax, the massive Varkonian sergeant, descended from his observation post. His 3 glowing eyes scanned the group, stopping on Ethan. The silence that followed was heavy. The other cadets, once skeptical of the human, now watched him with awe and caution. "Human," Korvax began, his voice a low rumble that echoed across the plaza. "You have done what no cadet, human or alien, has ever done. You have completed the Death March. You have endured heat, storms, exhaustion, and pain, and you stand before me. Explain yourself." Ethan stepped forward, posture straight, eyes clear and focused. "Sir," he said simply, "I kept moving. I paced myself, conserved energy, and stayed calm. I helped those who needed help, and I never gave up, that is all." Korvax's eyes narrowed, his expression unreadable. "Your species is different. You rely not on size, strength, or natural advantage. You rely on willpower, endurance, and determination. This is on something alien cadets cannot measure or predict." The other drill sergeants nodded silently, some with surprise, others with begrudging respect. Ethan's performance had not only shocked them, it had challenged everything they believed about human weakness. A Grithian cadet stepped forward cautiously. Its mandibles clicked nervously. "Human, you were calm, even when we were collapsing. You helped some of us, yet you still moved forward. How do you do it?" Ethan smiled faintly. "On Earth, we are taught that hardship is part of life. We learn to endure, to keep going even when the path is hard. I apply the same lesson here, step by step, breath by breath. That is all it takes." The cadet's antennae twitched as it processed this. It was a new perspective for many of the alien warriors whose species prized power, speed, or instinct above persistence. Korvax cleared his throat. "This performance will be recorded in the Academy's history. Human, you have proven that endurance, strategy, and willpower can surpass natural advantages. You have set a standard that will be studied by all cadets for generations." Ethan nodded, humble yet proud. He did not seek praise. His goal had never been to impress others. It had been to survive and prove quietly that humans were more capable than many believed. The surviving cadets gathered around him, some quietly asking questions, some seeking guidance. Ethan offered advice patiently, how to pace oneself, how to conserve energy, and how to endure discomfort without panic. For many alien cadets, these were entirely new concepts. Humans, they realized, had a kind of strength that did not depend on biology, armor, or technology. It was something deeper, mental, emotional, and relentless. Later, Korvax summoned Ethan to the command center of the Academy. The massive Varkonian stood before a group of alien commanders, all of whom watched the human with wide eyes. "This cadet," Korvax said slowly, "has survived the death march in a way that defies our expectations. He relied not on raw power, but on willpower, endurance, and composure. His species may have strengths we have underestimated." The alien commanders murmured among themselves. Discussions that had once dismissed humans as fragile and weak were now replaced by curiosity, caution, and respect. One reptilian commander, previously disdainful of humans, leaned forward. "If one human can endure this march," the reptilian said carefully, "what might an entire fleet of humans accomplish? What strategies, what resilience, what determination could they bring to the galaxy?" Korvax nodded slowly. "Precisely. Humans are unpredictable. They do not rely on biology alone. They endure what other species consider impossible. Their greatest weapon is their determination, and it cannot be measured with physical strength alone." Ethan, standing quietly, listened to these discussions. He did not need to intervene. The results of the death march spoke louder than any words could. He had shown in action what humanity was capable of. That evening, the cadets held a small ceremony in the central plaza. Certificates were given, ranks acknowledged, and the human cadet's achievement was celebrated quietly but sincerely. Ethan accepted the recognition with humility, aware that it was not about glory, it was about proving a point. The galaxy had underestimated humans for too long. The alien cadets who had struggled or failed during the march approached him, some offering thanks, some simply nodding in respect. For them, Ethan was not just a survivor. He was a symbol of a new perspective. Strength could be measured in more than muscle, speed, or armor. Willpower, endurance, and resilience mattered just as much. Korvax stood at the edge of the plaza, his glowing eyes fixed on Ethan. "This human has changed the way we view your species," he said softly to the other drill sergeants. "The galaxy will no longer see humans as weaklings. They are different, dangerous, not in violence but in endurance, in strategy, in will. They are unpredictable, and that is their advantage." Ethan watched quietly, not because he sought recognition, but because he understood the importance of the moment. The galaxy was beginning to notice humans, not for their weapons, not for their size, but for their spirit. As the twin moons rose, Over Varkan 9, Ethan reflected on the journey. The death march had tested him physically, mentally, and emotionally. He had endured storms, heat, exhaustion, and danger. He had helped others, maintained his composure, and achieved what no one had expected. And in doing so, he had begun to show the galaxy that humans had a quiet strength that could not be ignored. In the days that followed, the Academy adjusted its training programs. Drill sergeants incorporated new lessons on endurance, patience, and strategy. Alien cadets who had once dismissed humans now studied Ethan's methods. Even Korvax, who had seen countless elite cadets across decades, admitted that humanity's greatest advantage lay not in physical strength, but in the unyielding human spirit. Ethan did not claim victory. He did not boast. He simply continued his training, ready for the next challenge. Yet everywhere he went, whispers followed him. The human who had survived the death march, the human who had defied the odds, the human who had reminded the galaxy that strength comes in many forms, and willpower can surpass all else. One evening, as he trained under the fading light, a young alien cadet approached him. "Human, I want to be like you. How can I endure like you did?" Ethan smiled gently. "Step by step," he said. "Keep calm, never give up, and help others along the way. That is how we endure. That is how we survive." The cadet nodded, eyes wide with understanding. For the first time, he saw strength not just in muscle or size, but in determination, patience, and quiet persistence. Korvax watched from a distance, arms crossed, glowing eyes thoughtful. Humanity had proven itself in ways he had never expected. One cadet had completed the death march, but the implications were larger. Humans were not to be underestimated. Their endurance, strategy, and spirit could change the balance of the galaxy. And Korvax knew, with a chill running through him, that he had just witnessed the beginning of humanity's rise among the stars. Ethan looked out over the horizon, the twin suns dipping below the desert mountains. He did not see glory or fear. He saw opportunity. Humanity had endured the death march, and now, step by step, humans would endure challenges far beyond this desert. And in that endurance, the galaxy would come to learn an important truth. Humans are not weak. Humans are unstoppable.